The dawn came cold over Timber Falls, Oregon, the kind of November morning that bled color from the world before it could settle. Hank Callahan sat in his woodshop behind the house he built in 1975, running a hand plane across walnut that would outlive him by decades. The blade whispered through grain, peeling away ribbons of wood that curled and fell like promises he couldn't keep. His father's tools hung on pegboard walls, each one occupying the same spot for 60 years. Order, discipline, the architecture of a life lived according to code. The radio on the workbench carried voices he didn't care about, some news anchor dissecting America's cultural divides with the breathless urgency of someone who'd never seen real division. Hank twisted the dial until static replaced words. He preferred the honest sound of nothing to the dressed-up noise of fools who mistook opinion for wisdom. His hands shook as he set down the plane. Not fear. The tumor pressing against nerves in his spine, sending tremors through fingers that had once stitched wounds under mortar fire. He flexed them, watching tendons move beneath skin that had gone papery and thin. 64 years old, 210 pounds once, 178 now, and dropping. The cancer in his pancreas had metastasized to his liver, his lymph nodes, places the doctors recited like a grocery list of defeat. Stage 3, 8 to 12 months with treatment, 4 to 6 without. He'd chosen without. The phone on his hip buzzed the screen, showing a name he couldn't ignore. Doc Hill. The text displayed numbers that would have meant something to someone interested in fighting PSA at 47 liver enzymes, climbing appointment Monday for treatment planning. Hank deleted it without reading past the first line. He'd watched Barbara waste away, hooked to machines that bought her 3 extra months of suffering. Morphine, dreams, and vomit, and the humiliation of needing help to the bathroom. That wasn't living. That was the medical industry's idea of compassion stretched out across billing cycles. He walked to the shop window, looked across 5 acres that would belong to the VFW post after he was gone. The house, the tools, the truck, everything parceled out to whoever wanted it. Nothing left behind but wood shavings and a son buried in Arlington who'd put a rifle in his mouth at age 33. Danny, dead 13 years. Came back from Kandahar with ghosts behind his eyes, the kind the VA prescribed pills for instead of understanding. Hank had told him to be tougher. Told him every man carries weight and you don't complain about it. Told him 1,000 things that made sense to someone who survived Vietnam by shutting down and never opening back up. The kid shot himself 3 weeks after Hank said he needed to man up and get over it. Some lessons cost more than blood. The percolator in the kitchen finished brewing, the smell of coffee pulling him from the shop into the house. No Keurig, no pods. Real coffee grounds in a machine older than most of the people who thought technology improved everything. He poured black into a chipped mug Barbara had given him for Christmas 1982, the ceramic stained by 4 decades of mornings that all looked the same now. The photo wall above the kitchen table told the story he couldn't. Wedding day 1975. Barbara in white, him in dress blues. Both of them 22 and convinced forever meant something. Danny's birth 1983, red-faced and screaming. Danny's high school graduation 2001. Danny's deployment photo 2010, Marine Lance Corporal, square jaw and eyes that hadn't seen hell yet. Barbara's last Christmas 2021, hollowed out by Alzheimer's, but smiling because she'd forgotten she was dying. The funeral photo showed a flag-draped casket and Hank standing alone because Danny had been gone 10 years by then, and standing at your wife's grave doesn't require an audience. He sat at the table, lit a cigarette, even though smoking with pancreatic cancer was like throwing gasoline on a house fire. The nicotine steadied his hands. 2 cigarettes before breakfast. Then eggs from the neighbor's chickens cooked in the cast iron skillet his father had carried west during the Depression. Routine, structure, the framework that held chaos at bay. His phone rang at 7:43. Wade Cooper, sheriff of Timber County, for 16 years, best friend since grade school, brother, in the way Vietnam veterans understood brotherhood. Hank's voice came out gravel and early morning, little early for social calls. Wade's tone carried weight that had nothing to do with rank. Need you at the station. Got a situation. I'm not volunteering for nothing else. Dying man's got limited time for committee meetings and fundraisers. It's a kid, boy found at the Greyhound station. Been there all night. Won't talk, won't eat. Just sits there doing this thing with his hands tracing patterns on the table. Thought of you. Hank set down the cigarette. Why me? Because you're good with broken things. Because you got a way of seeing past the damage to what's underneath. And because I'm asking, the silence stretched long enough that Wade added, please. 20 minutes later, Hank drove his 1987 Ford F-150 into Timber Falls proper population, 8,000 and shrinking since the mills closed. Main Street looked like every dying logging town in the Pacific Northwest hardware store that survived on Rancher's Diner that served breakfast till 2, two churches competing for a congregation that remembered when Sunday meant something. One bar where loggers drank memories of better decades in the VFW Hall, where men gathered Tuesday mornings to play cards and tell lies about wars that actually happened. The sheriff's station occupied a brick building that predated statehood, 3 holding cells in back Wade's office up front, and a break room that smelled like burnt coffee and institutional resignation. Wade met him at the door, 58 years old, Marine Infantry, Vietnam, same years as Hank, carrying the kind of weight men their age wore in the gut and the eyes. Wade's handshake felt like assessment. You look like hell. Cancer will do that. Doc says you're refusing treatment. Doc talks too much. He's worried. We all are. Hank pulled free of the handshake. Where's the kid? Wade led him through the station toward the break room. Through the window, Hank saw a boy sitting at the Formica table small enough that his feet didn't touch the floor. The kid's right hand moved across the table surface, index finger, tracing invisible lines in repetitive patterns. His lips moved, counting something only he could see. Hank stopped. How old? 8, according to the note. Name's Eli Morrison. The boy had dark hair cut short military style. His face carried the kind of thin that came from missing too many meals, cheekbones sharp under skin that hadn't seen much sun. He wore jeans 2 sizes too big, held up with a belt cinched to the last hole. The hoodie swallowed him, gray fabric worn thin at the elbows. An army duffel bag sat at his feet, desert camouflage pattern, with a name tag stitched across the top, CPL-S Morrison. Something in Hank's chest tightened. The kid looked like Danny. Same build, same coloring, same faraway expression boys got when the world became too much to handle straight on. Hank's voice came out rougher than intended. Who left him? Stepfather, apparently. Derek Carver, according to the note. Found the kid at the bus station at 6 this morning. Security footage shows a man dropping him off around midnight, then driving away. Kid's been sitting at that bench ever since, doing exactly what he's doing now. Which is what? Counting, tracing routes. Deputy tried to talk to him, got nothing. Brought him here, offered food, water, bathroom. Kid used the bathroom, declined everything else. Just keeps counting. Hank watched the boy's finger complete a pattern, then start over from the beginning. The movement held precision, muscle memory, repeating a task that mattered in ways no one else understood. What's he counting? Highway routes best we can figure. He mutters numbers, distances. Highway 3047 miles. Highway 2689 miles. Like he's mapping something. The memory hit Hank sideways. Danny at age 7, arranging his toy soldiers in formations, counting them over and over, needing the numbers to stay constant because numbers didn't lie or leave or die in countries whose names you couldn't pronounce. The doctors called it anxiety. Hank called it the first sign his son would never fit into a world that demanded you pretend everything made sense. He opened the break room door. The boy's fingers stopped mid-pattern. His head lifted, gray eyes meeting blue for half a second before skittering away to focus on the wall behind Hank's shoulder. The kid's voice came out formal, older than 8. Are you the commanding officer? Hank blinked. What? You have authority here. The deputy deferred to you. That indicates command structure. Are you the commanding officer? I'm not a cop, just a friend helping out. The boy's finger resumed tracing. Then you lack jurisdiction. I'm required to speak only to official personnel regarding my situation. Hank pulled out a chair, sat down across from the kid. Up close, the resemblance to Danny intensified. Same sharp chin, same dark lashes, same way of holding himself, like he'd learned early that taking up space got you hurt. You always talk like a soldier. My mother was Army. She taught me proper protocols. Where's your mother now? The finger stopped again. KIA, 243 days ago, 8 months, 4 days, 17 hours from current time. The clinical delivery hit harder than tears would have. Hank recognized the mechanism, the way you could say anything as long as you stripped emotion from the words and turned grief into data. KIA means killed in action. Your mother died overseas. Negative, she died in Oregon, but it was enemy action. She just didn't know who the enemy was. Before Hank could ask what that meant, Wade appeared in the doorway with a crumpled piece of paper. Found this in the kid's duffel. Thought you should read it. The handwriting looked rushed letters leaning right like they'd been written by someone in a hurry to finish something they'd already decided to do. The paper showed water stains, maybe rain, maybe something else. To whoever finds Eli, I tried. God knows I tried. But the debts, the pressure, Sarah's family asking questions, I can't do this. Kids got problems. Special needs. I'm not equipped. I left him where buses run. Someone will find him. Someone better than me. I know this makes me a coward. I know Sarah's looking down, hating me. But I got nothing left to give. His mom's name was Sarah Morrison, Sergeant, U.S. Army Reserve. She died in a car accident. My fault, though they don't know. Eli's got Asperger's. He's smart but different. Needs routine structure. Military family might understand him better than I ever could. I don't deserve forgiveness. Just don't let the system break him worse than I already have. Derek Carver's stepfather. Hank read it twice, feeling the cold rage build. Not the hot kind that made you stupid. The kind that settled in your bones and turned into purpose. He killed her. Wade leaned against the doorframe. Note says accident. Note says my fault, though they don't know. That's not regret. That's confession with conditions. Hank, I looked into it. Sarah Morrison died in a single car accident 8 months ago. Brake failure on Highway 26. State police investigated, ruled it accidental. No evidence of tampering. Then they didn't look hard enough. Eli's voice cut through. Probability of brake failure on a 2019 Honda CR-V is 0.0027%. Odds of spontaneous catastrophic failure without external cause 1 in 47,000. Derek worked on Mom's car the night before she died. He changed the oil, checked the fluids, told her the brakes felt soft. She trusted him. Both men stared. The kid's voice never changed pitch, never wavered. He delivered the analysis like he was reading a weather report. Hank's voice came out quieter. You've been thinking about this a long time. Every day since Mom died, I tried telling people. The police said I was traumatized, imagining things. Derek said I was confused. Social workers said I needed therapy to process grief properly. No one checked the brake lines. No one investigated. They just believed him. Because he's an adult and you're a kid. Because the system accepts easy answers instead of accurate ones. Hank looked at Wade. What happens to him now? CPS is on the way. Cassie Newman, new caseworker. She'll take him to Portland, place him in emergency foster care while they locate next of kin. He got any family? File says Sarah's parents are deceased. No siblings. Father unknown. She was a single mom when she deployed to Iraq in 2008. Kid was born 2016. Hank folded the note, handed it back. I want to see the accident report. It's closed. Then open it. I can't reopen a case without new evidence. Kid just gave you probability analysis. From an 8-year-old with Asperger's who's grieving his mother. Judge would call it unreliable witness testimony. Then I'll find evidence you can use. Wade's expression shifted into something that looked like concern trying to masquerade as authority. Hank, you're dying. You got 4, maybe 6 months. You want to spend them chasing a closed case? What else am I going to do? Wait. The door opened. A woman in her 20s walked in carrying a tablet and the kind of optimism that came from believing systems worked if you followed procedures correctly. Bright eyes, clear skin, pantsuit that cost more than Hank's truck payment. She smiled at Eli like she'd trained for this. Her voice carried rehearsed gentleness. Hi, Eli. I'm Cassie Newman from Child Protective Services. I'm here to help you find a safe place to stay. Eli's finger traced faster, define safe. Cassie's smile faltered. Somewhere with people who can take care of you. A nice family who understands kids with special needs. You have quantitative data on placement success rates for autistic children in emergency foster care. Well, I am. We have excellent families who are trained. Training doesn't correlate with outcomes. Studies show autistic children experience 14.3% and higher rates of placement disruption compared to neurotypical children. Probability I'll be moved multiple times, 78%. Cassie looked at Wade. Is he always like this? Wade almost smiled. Just met him myself. She turned back to Eli, kneeling to eye level, even though the kid wasn't looking at her. I know this is scary. Change is hard. But we have a lovely family in Salem with 4 other kids. Their experience with autism spectrum. 4, so I would be the 5th. Eli's voice stayed flat. That's a child-to-adult ratio of 5 to 2, assuming both parents present. Optimal ratio for individual attention, 3 to 1. Your placement offers suboptimal conditions. Hank couldn't help it. The corner of his mouth moved. Kid's got a point. Cassie stood, frustration leaking through the professional veneer. Mr. Callahan, I appreciate your concern, but this is a matter for Child Protective Services. How many foster homes you been through, Ms. Newman? That's not relevant. I went through 11 before I aged out, 6 before I turned 12, got beat in 3, neglected in 5, tolerated in the rest. Your system's got a nice name and good intentions, but it's broken. Has been for 50 years. We have oversight now, regulations, training protocols. Lady, you can wrap that turd in gold foil. It's still a turd. Kid needs stability, not rotation through families collecting checks. Cassie's back straightened. And what do you suggest? You're not certified for foster care. You have no legal standing. By your own admission, you're terminally ill. What exactly do you think you can provide? Hank looked at Eli. The kid had stopped tracing, watching the adults negotiate his future like he was cargo being rerouted. I can provide what he needs most, someone who gives a damn. Mr. Callahan, how long's your process? Background check, home inspection, court hearing. Expedited process takes approximately 2 weeks. Where's he sleep tonight? Cassie's jaw tightened. Emergency shelter in Portland until Eli's voice cut through no. Everyone stopped. The kid had stood up, shoulders back, chin lifted in a way that made him look older and younger at the same time. His eyes stayed fixed on the wall behind Hank, but his voice carried absolute certainty. Cassie's tone softened. Sweetie, I know you're upset. Don't call me sweetie. My designation is Eli Morrison. I'm 8 years old, diagnosed Asperger's syndrome IQ 145. I'm not upset. I'm assessing variables and making tactical decisions based on available data. Eli, you're proposing transport to unknown location with unknown personnel. Historical data indicates 78% chance of placement failure. That man, Eli's finger pointed at Hank without looking directly at him, has demonstrated care protocols consistent with military structure. He asked questions. He listened to responses. He acknowledged my analysis is valid. Probability of positive outcome higher than your proposed alternative. Hank felt something crack in his chest. The kid was using math to explain why he wanted to be wanted. Cassie looked at Wade. Sheriff, this is highly irregular. Wade rubbed his face. Hank, you sure about this? No, but I'm sure about her alternative. You can't just take custody of a child because you don't like the system. Watch me. Cassie's professional mask slipped into something harder. If you interfere with a CPS removal, I'll have you arrested for obstruction. Hank stood moving between Cassie and Eli. You gonna arrest a dying vet for wanting to help a soldier's kid? The law doesn't care about sentiment. Then maybe the law's as broken as your system. Wade stepped between them. Everyone calmed down. Cassie, give me a minute. She hesitated, then walked into the hallway, tablet clutched against her chest like armor. Wade closed the door, leaving Hank and Eli alone in the break room that smelled like burnt coffee and desperation. Hank knelt, bringing himself eye level with the kid, even though it hurt his knees and his back, and everything else the cancer was eating. Son, look at me. Eli's eyes flicked to Hank's face for a second, then away. Your mom was Army. Sergeant. That right? A nod. I was Navy. Corpsman, you know what that is? Marine medic, attached to infantry units, casualty care under fire. That's right. Your mom and me, we did the same job. Different wars, same mission. Keep our people alive. Bring them home. Did you succeed? The question landed like shrapnel 27 times. And the others lost some too, but I never quit on a wounded man. Eli's finger started tracing again, slower this time. Am I wounded? Hank's throat closed. 30 seconds passed before he could speak. Yeah, kid, you are. Then you won't quit on me. It wasn't a question. The kid delivered it like a tactical assessment, calculating odds and making decisions based on incomplete information and desperate hope. Hank stood every year of his 64 pressing against joints that didn't work right anymore. No, soldier, I won't quit on you. He opened the door. Wade and Cassie stood in the hallway locked in the kind of whispered argument that happens when two people who can't agree try to find compromise. They stopped when Hank walked out. His voice carried the weight of every decision that couldn't be undone. He's staying with me. Cassie's eyes widened. Mr. Callahan, legally. Don't care about legally. Kids are not going to some shelter with strangers. You're not licensed for foster care. Don't need a license to do the right thing. The state requires, the state can require whatever. He needs stability. Wade held up his hands. Hank, I can't just let you walk out with the ward of the state. You gonna arrest me. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Only hard part is you two standing between me and that boy. Cassie's voice rose. If you take him, I'll file kidnapping charges. Hank turned on her. Then file them. I'm dying anyway. What are they gonna do? Give me life in prison? I'll be dead before the trial ends. Silence filled the hallway. Cassie looked at Wade. Wade looked at Hank, and somewhere behind them, Eli stood in the doorway watching adults play games with his future. Wade's voice came out tired. Jesus, Hank. Don't Jesus me. You called me down here because you knew what had happened. You know the system. You know what happens to kids like him. I know what happens to civilians who interfere with CPS. Then I'll take my chances. Cassie pulled out her phone. I'm calling my supervisor. Wade caught her wrist. Wait. She spun on him. Sheriff. Just wait, let me think. 30 seconds crawled past. Somewhere outside, a truck backfired. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed, and 3 people stood at an impasse that wouldn't resolve itself. Wade finally spoke. What if we made it official temporary emergency custody? I take responsibility. Check on them daily. Paperwork catches up in 2 weeks. Cassie's expression shifted between regulations and reality. That's not protocol. Protocol's gonna put that kid in a van to Portland right now. Look at him. They all turned. Eli stood perfectly still, hands at his sides, face blank, except for the way his lips moved, counting something only he could track. 1 through 10, over and over, the kind of self-soothing that kept panic from becoming visible. Cassie stared for a long moment, then her shoulders dropped. Fine, 72 hours. Then we revisit with proper documentation. Mr. Callahan, if anything goes wrong, won't. If he's harmed, neglected, or you prove unable to provide adequate care, he goes into state custody immediately. No arguments. Understood. You'll need a home inspection, criminal background check, medical evaluation. Wade's hand on her shoulder stopped the list. We'll handle it. I'll personally make sure everything's by the book. She looked at Hank. Why are you doing this? He could have said a lot of things, could have talked about Danny, about Barbara, about the way dying made you reassess what mattered. Could have mentioned the resemblance, the military connection, the fact that doing nothing made you complicit in systems that broke more than they fixed. Instead, he said, because nobody else is. 15 minutes later, Hank and Eli walked out of the station into November cold that tasted like rain. The kid carried his army duffel, dragging it because the bag weighed almost as much as he did. Hank reached for it. Eli pulled back. I can carry my own gear. Didn't say you couldn't, said it's easier with help. The kid considered this, then released the strap. Hank slung it over his shoulder, feeling the weight of everything the kid owned in the world. They reached the truck. Hank opened the passenger door, waited while Eli climbed in, then closed it and walked around to the driver's side. His hands shook, putting the key in the ignition. Not cancer this time. Something else. Eli's voice came from the passenger seat. You're scared. Hank started the engine. Little bit. Of what? Failing you. Probability calculations indicate failure rate increases with fear. You should proceed with confidence despite uncertainty. Hank almost laughed. You're 8 years old giving me tactical advice. Age doesn't correlate with correctness. Data does. They drove through Timber Falls past the hardware store and the diner and the bar, where men drank because drinking gave structure to days that didn't have it otherwise. The town looked exactly like it had when Hank came home from Vietnam in 1971. Same buildings, same streets, same people growing old, in the same houses their grandparents built. Some would call it dying. Hank called it lasting. Eli watched everything, his head turning to track buildings, street signs, parked cars. His fingers moved against his thigh, counting things Hank couldn't see. Population 8,213 based on last census. Median age 52.6. Declining population indicates economic contraction consistent with post-industrial rural areas. You memorize census data for fun. I memorize everything. It's easier than forgetting. The road out of town wound through what used to be timber country before the spotted owl and the mill closures and the slow death of industries that built the Pacific Northwest. Clear cuts from the 80s had grown back into dense second-growth forest. In another 100 years, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Nature healed itself given time. People not so much. Hank's property started where the county road ended. 5 acres, most of it trees, with a house and shop set back from what passed for a driveway. He'd built the place himself over 3 years, weekends and evenings after shifts at the mill. Barbara beside him learning how to swing a hammer and read levels and make something permanent out of lumber and sweat. The house looked exactly like what it was, a 1975 ranch style built by someone who understood structure but not aesthetics. Brown siding, brown roof, brown trim. 3 bedrooms, 1-bath kitchen that opened into a living room, that opened into memories Hank mostly tried to avoid. The shop out back was bigger than the house, better maintained, the place where he spent hours turning raw wood into furniture. People bought at farmers markets for prices that didn't quite cover materials. Eli climbed out of the truck, stood looking at the house like he was calculating square footage and assessing defensive positions. How many acres? 5. Zoned residential or agricultural? Agricultural, grandfathered in before they changed the codes. Nearest neighbor, quarter-mile east, half-mile west. Emergency services response time. Hank grabbed the duffel. 12 minutes for fire, 15 for ambulance. Why you asking? Situational awareness. Mom said you should always know your terrain. They walked to the front door. Hank unlocked it, pushed it open, stood aside to let Eli enter first. The kid stepped over the threshold cautiously like he was checking for tripwires. The living room held a couch, a recliner, a coffee table, and a TV Hank rarely turned on. Everything clean but worn, nothing decorative. The only color came from the photo wall above the table in the kitchen, visible through the doorway. Eli walked to the photos, studying them with the same intensity he'd brought to memorizing census data. His finger moved from frame to frame, not touching but mapping. These are your family. Were. Past tense indicates loss. How many? Wife died 3 years ago, son 13 years before that. Cause of death, most people would call the question rude. Hank recognized it as the clinical distance of someone who'd learned early that treating pain, like data, made it survivable. Barbara had Alzheimer's. Took 5 years to kill her. Danny put a gun in his mouth after his 3rd tour in Afghanistan. Eli's finger stopped. Self-inflicted casualty. Did you try to stop him? Didn't know he was that far gone till it was too late. Failure in recognizing deterioration indicates insufficient monitoring protocols. The words hit like a gut punch because they were true. Hank had missed the signs, ignored the calls, told himself Danny just needed time to readjust. By the time he realized his son wasn't adjusting, he was drowning. The kid had already made his decision. Hank set the duffel down. Yeah, I failed him. Will you fail me? The directness of it, the way Eli asked it like he was confirming specifications on equipment, demanded honesty. Probably, but I'll try not to. Trying indicates effort. Effort doesn't guarantee success, but improves probability. That your way of saying it's okay. That's my way of saying I understand risk-reward analysis. Hank showed him the spare bedroom, empty except for a twin bed frame without a mattress, a dresser missing 2 drawers, and a window that looked out over forest. Not much, but it had walls and a door and space for a kid who'd spent the night on a bus station bench. Eli walked the perimeter, 12 by 14, 168 square feet. Sufficient. I'll get you a mattress tomorrow. Tonight you can take the couch. Where will you sleep? My room, down the hall. That's inefficient. You're senior. You should maintain established sleeping quarters. Kid, I'm not giving up my bed. Couch is fine. Eli's expression didn't change, but something in his posture relaxed a fraction. Acknowledged. Dinner consisted of scrambled eggs and toast because Hank didn't cook, and the eggs were the only fresh thing in the house. Eli ate mechanically, fork moving from plate to mouth in measured intervals, chewing exactly 20 times before swallowing. No enjoyment, just fuel. Hank watched him. Your mom teach you to eat like that? Yes, sir. Mom said food is fuel. Fuel the body, fuel the mission. She was right, but food can also be more than that. Halbtini can be a thing you share with people, can be comfort when things are hard, can be something you actually taste instead of just consume. Eli considered this. I don't understand the distinction. You will. After dinner, Hank cleared the dishes while Eli stood at the kitchen sink staring out at darkness that had swallowed the forest. The kid's lips moved, counting something. Hank's voice came out gentler than he meant it. What are you counting? Days since Mom died. 243. That helped? Yes. Numbers don't change. People leave. Things end. But numbers stay constant. Kid, I gotta tell you something. Eli turned, shoulders tensing. I'm sick. Real sick. Got cancer. Doctors say I got 4 to 6 months, maybe less. Prognosis based on what variables? Pancreatic cancer stage 3. Metastasized to liver and lymph nodes. PSA climbing, tumor markers increasing. Treatment plan? None, I'm not doing treatment. Why not? Hank leaned against the counter. Because treatment buys me 3 months of hell for 3 months of time. I'd rather have 4 good months than 7 bad ones. Eli processed this. So you'll die young in approximately 120 days. Give or take? Then you can't keep your promise. What promise? You said you don't quit on wounded, but if you die, you quit. The logic was airtight and brutal. Hank had no counter for it except the truth. You're right, I'll die and leave you. But between now and then, I'll do everything I can to make sure you're safe. That's the best I can offer. Eli stared at him for a long time, gray eyes trying to calculate odds of promises kept by dying men. Mom said promises are contracts. Breaking them has consequences. Your mom was smart. She also said sometimes the only promise you can make is to try. Is that what you're promising, to try? Yeah, that's all I got. Another long pause. Then Eli nodded once. Acceptable. They set up the couch with blankets and a pillow. Eli arranged everything in precise right angles, adjusting until the geometry satisfied whatever internal specifications he carried. When he finally lay down, he pulled the blanket up to his chin and stared at the ceiling. Hank stood in the doorway to the hall. You need anything? I'm right down there. Copy that. You say that a lot. Copy that. It's proper radio protocol for acknowledging orders. I'm not giving you orders. You're providing directives. Same function, different terminology. Hank almost smiled. Get some sleep, soldier. He walked to his room, closed the door, sat on the bed he had shared with Barbara for 38 years, until she forgot who he was and then forgot how to breathe. The room held nothing of her now. He'd removed everything after the funeral because living with ghosts was worse than living with emptiness. His phone showed 3 missed calls from Doc Hill and 2 texts from Wade asking if he'd lost his mind. Probably. But sanity felt overrated when measured against an 8-year-old who calculated the probability of being abandoned again. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by pain in his gut that no amount of morphine quite covered. He woke at 2 a.m., stumbled to the bathroom, vomited blood that looked black in the fluorescent light. Normal now, expected. The cancer eating him from the inside while he tried to do one last thing that mattered. He splashed water on his face, stared at his reflection. 64 years old, looked 75. Skin yellow from liver failure, eyes sunken, cheekbones sharp. Dying in real time, measured in blood and bile and the steady march of cells that forgot how to quit. A sound from the living room pulled him from inventory. He walked down the hall, found Eli sitting on the couch with his duffel open, pulling out a notebook covered in careful handwriting. The kid didn't look up when Hank entered. Hank's voice came out rough. Can't sleep. Negative, sleep is difficult when variables remain unresolved. What variables? Eli opened the notebook. The pages showed maps, hand-drawn diagrams of roads, intersections, precise distances marked in neat numbers. Timelines spanning months, lists of dates and events, probability calculations written in the margins. And at the center of it all, the name Derek Carver. Hank sat on the couch. What is this evidence? I've been building a case against Derek since Mom died. Police wouldn't listen. Social workers said I was inventing coping mechanisms. But numbers don't lie, and these numbers prove Derek killed her. Hank took the notebook, flipped through pages that showed the kind of obsessive detail only a brilliant kid with autism spectrum could maintain. Every conversation Derek had mentioned about money, every gambling debt Eli had found receipts for, the insurance policy change dates, the timeline of Derek working on the car, the brake line failure point mapped against Highway 26, probability calculations that showed the statistical impossibility of accidental failure. His voice came out quiet. Kid, you've been carrying this around how long? 8 months, 4 days since they said it was an accident. I knew it wasn't. Mom taught me how to gather intelligence, how to document, how to build cases that couldn't be dismissed. She said truth is just data organized correctly. And nobody would look at your data. They said I was traumatized. Derek said I was confused. CPS said I needed therapy. But I'm not confused. I did the analysis. Derek had $127,000 in debt. Mom had $270,000 in assets. He changed her insurance beneficiary 26 days before she died. He worked on her car the night before the accident. The brake line was severed 47% through. Remaining integrity failed under braking load at mile marker 8.3 on Highway 26, exactly where probability indicated highest failure risk. Hank closed the notebook. This is evidence. Real evidence. We can use this. No one will listen to me. They'll listen to me. I'll make them listen. Eli's eyes finally met his just for a second. You promised. There it was again. That word, promise. The contract kids made with adults who almost always broke them. Hank's voice carried weight he hadn't felt since Danny was alive. Yeah, kid, I promise. We're gonna nail the bastard who killed your mom. And then we're gonna make sure you're safe. That's the mission. You and me. Copy that. Eli's face did something that wasn't quite a smile but was closer than Hank had seen. Copy that. They sat in the living room for another hour, Eli walking Hank through the evidence page by page, explaining his methodology with the precision of someone who'd learned early that being right didn't matter unless you could prove it. Hank listened, asked questions, started making notes of his own on what they'd need to prove murder instead of accident. At 3:30, Eli finally fell asleep, mid-sentence exhaustion, winning the battle against trauma. Hank covered him with the blanket, tucked it around shoulders that carried more weight than any 8-year-old should. He took the notebook to the kitchen, read it again under the overhead light that buzzed and flickered. The kid was right. All of it tracked. Derek Carver had killed Sarah Morrison for insurance money and then dumped her son when keeping him became inconvenient. Hank pulled out his phone, sent a text to Wade. Need to talk tomorrow. It's urgent. Then he called the number he'd been avoiding for 6 weeks. Doc Hill answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. Hank, it's 4 in the morning. I need to know something. Honest answer. Always. How long I got really? Silence stretched. Then 4 months, maybe 6 if you're lucky. Pain's gonna get worse. Fatigue. You'll start losing function around month 4. By month 6, you'll be bedridden if you make it that long. Can I stay functional for 4 months? Define functional. Can I drive? Can I think straight? Can I take care of a kid? Doc's voice sharpened. Hank, what did you do? Took custody of an 8-year-old whose stepfather murdered his mother and abandoned him. Jesus Christ. Can I do it 4 months? With pain management, maybe. But Hank, that kid's gonna watch you die. You thought about that? Yeah, I have. But 4 months with someone who gives a damn beats 4 years in the system. So tell me, can I give him 4 good months? Doc sighed, the sound of a man watching his friend make choices that couldn't be unmade. Yeah, if you manage the pain, if you don't push too hard, if you let people help, you can give him 4 months, maybe more if you're stubborn enough. I'm stubborn enough. I know, that's what worries me. Hank ended the call, sat at the kitchen table looking at photos of people who weren't coming back. Barbara smiling before Alzheimer's stole her mind. Danny in dress blues before Afghanistan broke something essential. 38 years of marriage, 33 years of being a father, all of it boiled down to photos on a wall, and regrets he couldn't fix. But he could fix this. Could give one kid 4 months of stability. Could prove Derek Carver murdered Sarah Morrison. Could make sure Eli didn't end up in the system that chewed through children like the mill chewed through timber. 4 months, 120 days, enough time to finish one last mission. Hank looked out the window at darkness that would become dawn cancer eating him from the inside, and made a choice that would define whatever time he had left. He picked up Eli's notebook, opened it to the first page, and started planning how to prove murder. Because Marines don't quit on wounded, and Eli Morrison was wounded in ways that wouldn't show up on x-rays. Outside, the first light bled across Oregon sky, turning darkness into the kind of gray that promised rain. Inside, an old man dying of cancer read a child's meticulous case against evil and decided that some promises were worth keeping, no matter what they cost. The mission had begun. Wade Cooper arrived at Hank's house at 7 the next morning, carrying coffee and the kind of expression that meant he'd spent the night thinking about jurisdiction and consequences. Hank met him on the porch, still wearing yesterday's flannel, because changing clothes required energy he didn't have after 3 hours of sleep and a notebook full of evidence that demanded attention. Wade handed him the coffee without greeting. Cassie called her supervisor last night. They're not happy. Don't care. You should. Emergency custody expires in 72 hours. If they push back, you'll be in court explaining why a dying man with no legal standing took custody of a ward of the state. Hank sipped coffee that tasted like Wade's attempt at helping. Then we make it legal before 72 hours runs out. That's not how it works. Background checks take time. Home inspections, medical evaluations to prove you're capable. The screen door opened. Eli stood there wearing the same clothes from yesterday, hair sticking up on one side, holding the notebook against his chest like body armor. His eyes moved between the two men, calculating threat levels. His voice came out careful. Is he here to remove me? Wade's expression softened in the way it did when he had to disappoint someone. No, son, just checking in. Checking indicates surveillance. Surveillance indicates lack of trust. Do you trust Mr. Callahan's judgment? I trust his intentions. I'm worried about his capacity. Eli's gaze fixed on the porch railing. He demonstrated adequate capacity yesterday. He listened when others dismissed me. He accepted evidence when others called it imagination. He made tactical decisions consistent with my welfare. Those indicators suggest functional capacity. Wade looked at Hank. Kid argues like a lawyer. Kid thinks like his mother, Army medic, taught him how to assess situations. Speaking of his mother, Wade pulled folded papers from his jacket. I pulled Sarah Morrison's accident report last night. Couldn't sleep anyway, figured I'd look at what we got. Hank took the papers. 3 pages, state police investigation photos attached. Sarah's Honda CR-V crumpled against a roadside barrier at mile marker 8.3 on Highway 26. Brake line failure cited as cause. Vehicle inspected, no signs of tampering, noted. Ruled accidental. Case closed. He studied the photos. The brake line in the image showed a clean brake metal twisted, but the edge too precise for corrosion. Looked like it had been scored, weakened, left to fail under pressure. Eli appeared at his elbow. They didn't look close enough. No, they didn't. Wade's voice carried warning. Hank, you can't just decide a closed case is wrong because a kid with Asperger's did better detective work than your state police. Hank handed back the report. That brake line was cut, partially, weakened to fail under load. Someone who knew cars knew what they were doing. Derek Carver's file says he worked as a mechanic before joining the Army. Eli's voice cut in. 2 years at Jiffy Lube, discharged for theft. Enlisted 2005, discharged 2007. Admin clerk, never saw combat. Filed PTSD claim, 2009, granted 50% disability despite no combat exposure. Both men stared at the kid. Eli stared at the porch floor, reciting facts from memory like he was reading a file. Wade's tone shifted. How do you know all that? Derek liked to talk about his service when he drank. He told Mom he was a combat veteran. When I accessed public records through the library computer, his DD-214 contradicted his claims. That's stolen valor. Federal crime under Stolen Valor Act of 2013. Hank felt something like pride. Kid did his homework. Kid's 80 years old, accessing military records. Kid's brilliant, and his stepfather's a fraud who murdered his mother. Wade rubbed his face. Even if I believed all this, and I'm not saying I don't, we can't reopen a case based on an 8-year-old's research. We need new evidence, witness testimony, something that gives me probable cause. Then we get it. How Tom, VFW meetings tomorrow. I'll bring it up. We got resources. Wade's eyes narrowed. Hank, you can't what I ask my brothers to help investigate a veteran's murder? That's what we do. We take care of our own. You're talking about vigilante investigation. I'm talking about community involvement. Big difference. Eli's voice interrupted. Sheriff Cooper, what's your statistical confidence level that official channels will reopen this investigation without external pressure? Wade looked at the kid low. Then external pressure is tactically necessary. Mr. Callahan's approach is sound. Son, it's also illegal. Only if we break laws, gathering publicly available information, interviewing, willing witnesses, documenting evidence, those are legal activities. Wade stared at Eli, then at Hank. He's too smart for his own good. Gets that from his mother. They stood on the porch watching November cold turn breath to mist. Inside the house held spaces that would need filling. A kid who needed structure. A dying man who needed purpose. And between them, a murder that needed solving before time ran out. Wade finally spoke. 72 hours, that's all I can give you. After that, if Cassie pushes and you don't have legal standing, I have to enforce the law. Understood. And Hank, if you're wrong about this, if Derek didn't kill her, you're putting that kid through hell for nothing. Hank looked at Eli. Am I wrong? The kid's gray eyes lifted briefly. No, sir. Derek killed Mom. The evidence supports it. You just have to make others see what I already proved. Wade left 20 minutes later, taking coffee cups and leaving instructions about the home inspections scheduled for tomorrow. Cassie's supervisor wanted documentation. Photos, proof that a dying vet in a house built in 1975 could provide adequate care for a special needs child. Hank walked Eli through the morning routine. Coffee from the percolator, eggs from the neighbor's chickens, toast from bread that came in plastic because driving to town for fresh stuff from the bakery cost gas money he didn't have. Eli ate the same way he had last night, mechanical, measured, no pleasure in it. Hank set down his fork. You ever taste your food? I consume it. Tasting is secondary to nutritional function. No, it's not. Food's supposed to be something you enjoy. Enjoyment is an inefficient use of consumption time. Kid, everything's not about efficiency. Sometimes you gotta slow down and actually experience things. Eli's fork paused. Mom said Marines eat fast because you never know when you'll have to move. Your mom was right about a lot of things, but she was also teaching you survival. We're not surviving anymore. We're living. Different skill set. After breakfast, Hank led Eli to the workshop. The kids stopped at the threshold, eyes tracking tools on pegboard walls, the bench saw in the corner, sawdust covering the floor in patterns that showed where Hank spent most of his time. The smell hit Eli visibly, cedar and walnut and pine mixed with machine oil and 60 years of accumulated work. Eli's voice came out quieter than usual. What do you build? Furniture mostly, tables, chairs, cabinets, stuff people need, for profit. Some. Sell it at farmer's market first Saturday every month. Makes enough to cover materials, little left over. Eli walked to the workbench where the walnut board from yesterday sat half finished. His finger traced the grain, following patterns invisible to anyone who didn't see the world in mathematical relationships. Fibonacci spirals. What? The grain, it follows Fibonacci sequence. See, each ring is width relates to the previous two. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Natural logarithmic growth pattern. Hank looked at wood he'd worked for 40 years, never noticing what an 8-year-old saw in 30 seconds. Didn't know that. Most people don't. They see wood. I see math. That why you like numbers? Because they show up everywhere. Eli's hand dropped. I like numbers because they don't change. People dig, promises break, but 2 plus 2 always equals 4. Numbers aren't honest. Hank picked up a hand plane, adjusted the blade, held it out. Want to learn how to use this? Suspicion crossed the kid's face. Why? Because you are living here and everybody who lives here learns to build. That's the rule. I don't know the rules yet. First rule, if you break something, you fix it. Second rule, you pull your weight. Third rule, you learn skills that make you useful. Fourth rule, dinner's at 6 unless someone's bleeding. Eli processed this. Those are clear expectations. I can work with clear expectations. They spent the next 2 hours at the workbench. Hank showed Eli how to hold the plane, how to read grain direction, how to let the tool do the work instead of forcing it. The kid's hands were too small for most of the tools, but he had the kind of focus that compensated for size. Every stroke measured, every movement calculated. No wasted effort. Hank watched him work and saw Danny at 7 years old learning these same lessons in this same shop. Before the war broke him, before PTSD turned anxiety into something lethal, before Hank failed to see the signs until it was too late to matter. His chest tightened. The morphine was wearing off. Pain radiating from his gut through his back, the kind that announced itself in waves. He leaned against the workbench, breathing through it. Eli stopped planing, "You're in pain." "Little bit." Scale of 1 to 10. 6, maybe 7. "You should take your medication." "I will, in an hour." Pain management is more effective when addressed early rather than after escalation. Hank almost smiled. "You sound like a nurse." "Mom was a medic. She taught me triage protocols." "Your mom taught you a lot of things." Eli's hands went still on the plane. "She taught me everything. How to think, how to survive, how to see patterns others miss. Then Derek killed her and I couldn't save her because I'm just a kid and nobody listens to kids." The words came out flat, clinical, devoid of emotion, except for the way Eli's knuckles went white gripping the tool. Hank's voice dropped. "You couldn't have saved her, wasn't your job." "Then whose job was it?" "The people who were supposed to investigate, the cops who should have looked closer, the system that's supposed to protect people. Systems failed, so what's the alternative? We make our own system. You and me and whoever else gives a damn. We gather evidence they can't ignore. We prove Derek killed her. We make sure he pays." Eli looked up, gray eyes meeting blue for longer than usual. "That's vigilante justice." "No, that's community action. There's a difference, Darwin." "What difference?" Vigilantes break laws. We're going to use laws. Just going to make sure they're applied correctly this time." They worked until noon, Eli learning how to shave wood into something smooth enough to build with. The kid had natural talent, the kind of spatial reasoning and pattern recognition that made complex tasks intuitive. By the time Hank called lunch, Eli had created a small box, rough, unfinished, but structurally sound. He held it up. "What do I do with this?" "Keep it. First thing you made, you'll want to remember." "Why would I want to remember?" "Because it proves you can create something. That matters when you spend a lot of time feeling broken." Eli stared at the box, turning it in his hands. "Am I broken?" The question landed with weight. Hank knew the answer mattered, knew whatever he said would become something the kid carried. "No, you're different. Different's not broken. Different just means you see things others miss, like Fibonacci spirals in wood grain." "Kids at school said I was broken. Teachers said I had deficits." "They were wrong. You got strengths they don't understand. Takes most people years to figure out what you know at 8. Eli set the box on the workbench. "What do I know?" "That the world's not fair. That systems fail people. That you got to fight for what matters. Most folks never learn that. They coast through life thinking everything works if you follow rules. You already know better. That's not broken. That's wise." Lunch was sandwiches in silence. Hank made peanut butter and jelly because it required no cooking, and his stomach couldn't handle much anyway. Eli ate his in 6 bites, mechanical as always, then organized the crumbs on his plate into small piles arranged by size. Hank watched. "What are you doing organizing?" "It helps." "Helps what?" "Helps everything feel less chaotic." That night, after Eli fell asleep on the couch, Hank called Doc Hill. "I need you to check the kid, make sure he's healthy. CPS wants medical documentation." Doc's voice carried skepticism. "You want me to enable this crazy plan? I want you to make sure an 8-year-old who got abandoned at a bus station is physically okay. And if he's not, then we get him treatment, but either way, he stays with me." Silence. "Then, tomorrow, bring him to my house. I'll do the exam off the books." Tuesday morning brought the VFW meeting. Post-1847 occupied a cinder block building on the east edge of town, American flag out front. POW MIA flag, below it parking lot full of trucks older than most people's mortgages. Inside smelled like coffee and cigarettes and the particular kind of silence men who'd seen combat carried with them. Hank walked in with Eli following 2 steps behind. The kid's eyes tracked everything exits occupants' sightlines. Army training filtered through an 8-year-old's understanding of threats. 5 men sat around a table playing cards. They looked up when Hank entered. Gunny Stewart, 68 Marines faced like weathered leather. Pops McKenzie, 72 Army hands that shook from Agent Orange exposure. Chief Nakamura, 70 Navy quiet, unless he had something worth saying. Joker Williams, 65. Air Force named for his laugh, not his humor. Preacher Thompson, 67. Chaplain still wore his collar on Tuesdays. Gunny set down his cards. Hank, heard you adopted a kid. Temporary custody. This is Eli Morrison. 5 sets of eyes assessed the boy. Eli stood at attention, shoulders back, chin-level hands at his sides. Military bearing taught by a mother who understood that structure kept chaos manageable. Pop spoke first. You served, son. Eli's voice came out formal. Negative, sir, but my mother was Army Reserve, Sergeant, Medic, Iraq, 2008. She taught me protocols. Your mother's still serving. KIA 8 months ago, car accident, classified as accidental, but evidence indicates hostile action. The room went silent. These men understood the language. KIA meant killed in action. Hostile action meant enemy contact. But car accident in Oregon didn't compute with military terminology unless you understood that Eli was telling them his mother was murdered. Chief leaned forward. Explain. Eli pulled his notebook from his jacket, set it on the table open to the first page. For the next 20 minutes, he walked 5 Vietnam veterans through his case against Derek Carver. Financial motive, insurance fraud, mechanical sabotage, probability analysis, stolen valor as character evidence. Every page documented, every claim sourced. When he finished, no one spoke. Gunny picked up the notebook, flipped through pages, studying the handwriting that showed obsessive precision. He looked at Hank. This is solid intelligence. I know. State police didn't see it. They saw what they wanted to see. Quick closure, no complications. Pop's hands shook worse than usual. You asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking if anyone wants to help a veteran's kid get justice for his mother. Joker lit a cigarette. That's a dangerous question. I'm dying. Dangerous don't mean much to me anymore. Preacher's voice carried the weight of someone who'd seen men ask God for permission to do necessary evils. What do you need? Hank pulled out the accident report. Need someone to inspect that brake line proper. Chief, you worked on cars 40 years. Can you tell if it was cut? Chief studied the photo. If it's still in evidence, yeah, I can tell. Gunny, you know people in Astoria. Can you interview neighbors, find out what they saw before Sarah died? Gunny nodded. Can do. Pops, you still got connections at the VA. Need Derek's full service record. Real one, not the story he tells. Pops' shaking hands folded. I'll make calls. Joker, you got that camera gear. Can you surveil Derek, see what he's up to now? Joker grinned without humor. Been waiting for a good reason to use it. Preacher, you still have access to chaplain networks. Some, what do you need? Medical records if you can get them. PTSD claim documentation. Anything that shows his disability is fraudulent. Preacher considered this. That's ethically complicated. So's murdering a veteran for insurance money. Point taken. Eli watched the men organize themselves into a tactical unit with the ease of people who'd done it before. His voice came out quieter than usual. Why are you helping? Gunny looked at him. Because your mother was one of ours. Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, doesn't matter. We're all the same brotherhood. Someone kills one of ours, we respond. That's the code. What code? The one that says we don't leave people behind, living or dead. Your mother's dead, but she left you. Taking care of you is taking care of her. That's how this works. Eli processed this, something shifting in his expression. I didn't know there was a code for after. Chief's voice came from across the table. Code doesn't end when service does. It just changes application. They spent another hour planning, dividing tasks, setting deadlines, coordinating communication. Hank watched them work and remembered why he'd survived Vietnam, not because of training or equipment, but because of men who treated brotherhood like it was worth dying for. That afternoon, Hank took Eli to meet Doc Hill. Raymond Hill lived in a house that looked like retirement from a Navy medical career, neat, organized, decorated with photos of ships and foreign ports and people who'd died before their time. He answered the door wearing bifocals in suspicion. His eyes moved from Hank to Eli. "This the kid. This is Eli Morrison. Eli, this is Doc Hill. He kept me alive in Vietnam." Doc's expression softened a fraction. "Hank's exaggerating. I just sewed him up a few times." "7 times," Hank corrected. "Shrapnel gunshot, knife wound burns, and 3 infections that should have killed me." Eli's eyes widened slightly. "You were wounded 7 times. Vietnam was complicated. Doc led them to what used to be an exam room before he retired. Medical equipment still lined the walls maintained for the veterans who couldn't afford VA appointments or didn't trust the system anymore. He had Eli sit on the exam table, pulled out a stethoscope. The exam took 30 minutes. Height, weight, vitals, reflexes, vision, hearing. Doc worked with the efficiency of someone who treated thousands of people under worse conditions. Eli submitted to it without complaint, answering questions in clinical detail that made Doc's eyebrows rise. When it finished, Doc wrote notes in a file. "Kid's underweight, 5 pounds below normal for his age and height, otherwise healthy, no signs of abuse beyond neglect. Asperger's is documented in his medical history. He'll need continued monitoring, but he's stable." Hank's voice came out relieved. "So he's okay to stay with me?" "Medically, yes. Practically." Doc looked at Eli. "Son, can you give us a minute?" Eli slid off the table, walked into the hallway without argument. Doc closed the door. His voice dropped. "Hank, you can't do this." "I'm doing it. You're dying. 4 months, maybe less. That kid's already lost his mother. You want him to watch you waste away too. Better than foster care. You don't know that?" "I do know that. I lived it. 11 homes in 6 years. Beat in 3, neglected in most of the rest. That kid's got Asperger's. System will chew him up." Doc's jaw tightened. "Then find him a proper placement. Someone who'll be there long term." "I will. After we prove Derek killed his mother. After we make sure the kid knows someone fought for him. Then I'll find him a home. And if you die before then I die trying, which is better than dying watching TV and waiting for the cancer to finish." They stared at each other, 2 old men who'd seen too much death to pretend it didn't matter. Doc finally nodded. "I'll write the report. But Hank, when the pain gets too bad, when you can't function, you call me. Don't let that kid watch you suffer alone." "Deal." Wednesday brought the home inspection. Cassie Newman arrived at 9 a.m. with a clipboard and the determination of someone who believed paperwork created safety. She walked through every room, photographed everything, asked questions designed to reveal inadequacy. Eli followed her, correcting inaccuracies. "That's not a fire hazard. That's a kerosene heater rated for indoor use, manufactured 1983, maintained according to specifications. Fire risk is 0.04% with proper ventilation." Cassie stopped. "Eli, I'm just trying to make sure you're safe." "I am safe. Statistically safer than 83% of foster placements based on incident reports from..." "Where are you getting these statistics?" "Library database, public records, federal reporting on child welfare outcomes. Would you like citations?" She looked at Hank. "Is he always like this?" "Yeah, kid reads a lot." The inspection took 2 hours. Cassie found violations: no smoke detectors in 2 bedrooms, outdated electrical in the shop, loose railing on the porch. Minor stuff. Fixable. She made notes, took more photos, asked about Hank's medical condition with the kind of directness that made him want to lie. He didn't. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer, 4 to 6 months, refusing treatment. "And you think that's an appropriate environment for a special needs child?" "I think it's better than any alternative you're offering." "Mr. Callahan, ma'am, I respect your job. I know you're trying to help, but that kid needs someone who won't give up on him. I got 4 months. That's 4 months of stability instead of 4 months bouncing between strangers. Which would you choose?" Cassie didn't answer. She finished her inspection, compiled her report, left with the promise that a decision would be made within 48 hours. After she left, Eli stood in the living room staring at nothing. She's going to recommend removal, isn't she? Maybe. What's my probability of staying here? Hank sat on the couch, exhaustion hitting harder than usual, 50-50. Could go either way. Those are poor odds. Sometimes you gotta play poor odds because they're the only odds you got. That night, Gunny called with the first intelligence report. He'd driven to Astoria, interviewed Sarah Morrison's neighbors. Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman next door, remembered everything. The fights between Sarah and Derek, the threats of divorce, Derek working on Sarah's car late at night, the way he'd watch from the window the morning Sarah left for work, smiling, like he knew something no one else did. Gunny's voice came through rough. Hank, this wasn't an accident. That bastard planned it. I know. Mrs. Chen will testify. She's scared, but she'll do it. Good. What else? Derek's got a new girlfriend, lives in Coos Bay. Jennifer Park, 29, single mom, Navy veteran with medical discharge. Kid noticed Derek moved in 6 weeks ago, already talking marriage. Hank's blood went cold. He's doing it again. Looks that way. Jennifer's got life insurance through her work. 200 grand. We gotta warn her. Can't. No proof yet. We go to her. Derek denies everything. We look crazy. So we watch her get killed. No, we prove he killed Sarah first. Then we save Jennifer. But we do it smart, not desperate. Hank ended the call, stared at his phone, felt the weight of time running out. 4 months for him. Maybe less for Jennifer Park if Derek stayed true to pattern. Thursday brought more intel. Chief examined Sarah's Honda still sitting in county impound. The brake line showed scoring consistent with a blade weakened deliberately to fail under pressure. He photographed everything, documented his findings, wrote a report in the kind of technical language that couldn't be dismissed. Pops accessed Derek's service record through VA connections that officially didn't exist. The file showed what Eli already knew: admin clerk never deployed to combat zone, PTSD claim based on witnessing a training accident that mental health records suggested was exaggerated, if not fabricated outright. Preacher found medical documentation showing Derek's disability evaluation included inconsistencies between claimed symptoms and observed behavior. The examining psychologist had noted concerns about malingering, but approved the claim anyway because the system defaulted to belief. By Friday morning, they had evidence. Not enough for murder charges, but enough to reopen the investigation. Enough to question the original ruling. Enough to make Derek Carver's life complicated. Hank called Wade. I got something you need to see. They met at the diner, Wade in uniform, Hank in flannel bomb, Eli sitting between them, organizing sugar packets by color. Hank laid out everything: Chief's brake line analysis, Mrs. Chen's testimony, Derek's service record, financial motive, the new girlfriend fitting the pattern. Wade studied the documents. This is good work. Good enough to reopen. Maybe I'll take it to the DA, see if they'll look at it. How long, Porsche? Week, maybe 2. I don't have 2 weeks. Cancer's accelerating. I gotta finish this while I still can. Wade's expression shifted into something that looked like grief, trying to masquerade as professionalism. Hank, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just help me nail the son of a bitch. That afternoon, Derek Carver showed up at Hank's house. The knock came hard, aggressive, the kind that announced intention. Hank opened the door to find a man in his late 30s, decent looking if you didn't notice the eyes. Cold eyes, calculating eyes. The kind that assessed value in everything and found most of it wanting. Derek's voice came out smooth. Mr. Callahan, Derek Carver, I believe you have my stepson. Hank kept the screen door closed. Had him. CPS gave him to me legal. Temporary. I'm his legal guardian. Made a mistake leaving him, but I'm ready to make it right. By abandoning him at a bus station. I was grieving, made poor choices, but I'm sober now, got counseling, ready to be the father Eli needs. He doesn't need a father who killed his mother. The smooth mask slipped. Careful with accusations. Slander's a crime. So's murder. Derek's eyes narrowed. You got no proof. Got enough. Brake line analysis. Witness testimony, financial motive. Your stolen valor claim. It's all coming together. Stolen valor. I served my country. You pushed papers in an air-conditioned office and claimed PTSD for benefits. That's fraud, not service. Derek's hands clenched. You don't know anything about my service. I know you never saw combat. Know you lied about trauma to get disability. Know you married Sarah Morrison because she had money and you had debts. Know you killed her when she was going to leave you. You're a crazy old man playing detective with a retarded kid's delusions. The screen door opened. Hank stepped onto the porch, closing distance until he was 6 inches from Derek's face. Call him that again. Derek's eyes showed fear for half a second. What are you going to do? You're dying. You're weak. You got nothing. I got 4 months and nothing to lose, which makes me dangerous. You threatening me? I'm promising you, you come near that kid, I'll finish what the cancer started. Derek backed up a step, recovered his composure. I'm filing for custody tomorrow. And when I win, first thing I'll do is put that little freak in the institution where he belongs. Hank's hands shot out, grabbed Derek's collar, slammed him against the porch railing. Pain exploded in his gut, but he didn't let go. You threaten him again, you won't make it to court. Derek struggled. That's assault. I'm pressing charges. Wade's cruiser pulled into the driveway, lights off, but presence clear. He got out slowly, hand near his weapon. Hank let him go. Hank held for 3 more seconds, then released. Derek stumbled back, straightening his shirt, breathing hard. Derek's voice came out shaky. You saw that. Assault. I want him arrested. Wade's expression stayed neutral. Mr. Carver, I suggest you leave. He assaulted me. I saw 2 men having a discussion that got heated. I didn't see assault, but I will see trespassing if you don't leave private property. Derek looked between them, understanding he'd lost this round. You're both going to regret this. He stalked to his car, a beat-up Civic with Oregon plates. Before getting in, he turned, see you in court, old man. And when I win, I'll make sure that kid knows you failed him just like you failed your son. The words hit like bullets. Hank stood frozen as Derek drove away, dust rising behind the Civic, truth hanging in the November air. Wade's voice came quiet. He knows about Danny. Everybody knows about Danny. Small town, dead vet, news travels. Hank, just don't. He went inside. Eli stood in the living room, face blank, but hands shaking. Is he going to take me? Not if I can help it. But he might. Yeah, he might. Then what do we do? Hank's voice came out harder than he meant. We fight. We gather more evidence. We prove he killed your mother. We make sure a judge sees what really happened. And if we lose, the question hung between them. Hank didn't have a good answer because losing meant exactly what Derek threatened Eli. In an institution, Derek free justice denied. His voice came out quieter. Then we lose fighting, which is better than not fighting at all. That night, Hank's pain spiked to levels morphine couldn't touch. He vomited blood in the bathroom, hands shaking, vision blurring. When he came out, Eli sat on the couch, watching him with eyes that saw too much. The kid's voice came out small. You're getting worse. I'm fine. You're not fine. Your pain threshold has been exceeded. You need stronger medication or you need hospital intervention. I need to finish this mission. What if you can't? Hank sat on the couch, breathing hard. Then you finish it. You're smart enough. You got the evidence. You just need adults to listen. Adults don't listen to kids. Then make them listen. Show them what you showed me. Make them see what you see. You got a gift, Eli. Use it. Eli stared at his hands. I don't want to do it without you. You won't have to. I got 4 months. We'll finish this together. Promise. There was that word again. Promise, the thing kids believed in and adults broke. Hank's voice carried every ounce of conviction he had left. I promise we finish this together, or we don't finish at all. They sat in silence, the house settling around them, cancer eating through promises, time running out faster than either of them wanted to admit. Outside, November turned toward December. Inside, an old man and a young boy made plans to fight evil with whatever strength they had left. The mission continued. The custody hearing convened on Monday morning in Multnomah County Courthouse, Judge Margaret Stone presiding. Hank sat at the defendant's table with Pastor Reed acting as counsel, feeling every one of his 64 years pressed into the wooden chair. The courtroom smelled like floor wax, and the institutional confidence of systems that believe procedure created justice. Across the aisle, Derek Carver wore a suit that looked rented. His lawyer, a Portland attorney named Brent Morrison, who specialized in family law and had the kind of smile that cost $300 an hour. Derek's posture radiated wounded righteousness, the devoted stepfather wronged by circumstances and elderly interference. Eli sat in the gallery behind Hank, flanked by Doc Hill and Wade Cooper. The kid wore clothes Hank had bought him, Saturday khakis and a button-down that made him look like someone headed to church instead of a battle that would determine his future. His hands rested on his notebook, fingers twitching in patterns only he understood. Judge Stone reviewed the files, her reading glasses perched on a nose that had witnessed 40 years of people lying about their intentions. 67 years old widow of a Vietnam casualty, she carried the particular skepticism of someone who'd seen the system fail more often than it succeeded. Her voice cut through the courtroom. We're here to determine temporary custody of Eli Morrison, age 8. Mr. Carver, you're petitioning for return of guardianship. Mr. Callahan, you're requesting extended temporary custody pending adoption proceedings. Mr. Morrison, your opening statement. Derek's lawyer stood smoothing his tie. Your Honor, my client made a terrible mistake in a moment of grief-stricken desperation. Derek Carver loved Sarah Morrison deeply. Her sudden death devastated him. In his anguish, he made the poor decision to leave Eli at a public location, believing someone better equipped would help the boy. He immediately regretted this action and has since completed counseling, secured stable employment, and prepared appropriate housing. He's the boy's legal guardian appointed by the mother. He deserves the opportunity to correct his mistake and provide Eli with the family structure he needs. Morrison presented documents, Derek's apartment lease pay stubs from a security job, counseling certificates, character references from people Hank didn't recognize. Clean, professional, exactly what judges wanted to see. Pastor Reed stood when his turn came. Your Honor, Hank Callahan is a decorated Vietnam veteran who has provided Eli Morrison with stability, safety, and genuine care in the 3 weeks since taking custody. While Mr. Callahan faces health challenges, he has demonstrated capacity to meet Eli's needs and has built a support network through the veteran community. Most importantly, Eli has thrived under Mr. Callahan's care in ways documented by medical evaluation and educational assessment. Reed presented Doc Hill's medical report. Cassie Newman's revised home inspection, showing all violations, corrected a letter from the homeschool co-op praising Eli's academic progress and improved social engagement. Thinner documentation but honest, Judge Stone studied both presentations. I'll hear testimony. Mr. Morrison, call your first witness. Derek took the stand. Under Morrison's questioning, he painted himself as the grieving husband who'd snapped under pressure but had since reformed. His voice carried practiced remorse, hitting every note of contrition without overdoing it. Yes, he'd made mistakes. Yes, he'd let Eli down. But he loved that boy, wanted to make amends, had the resources to provide proper care. Pastor Reed's cross-examination cut deeper. Mr. Carver, you stated you loved Sarah Morrison. When did you marry her? 3 years ago, April 2021. And when did you change her life insurance beneficiary from her son to yourself? Derek's composure flickered. That's standard for married couples. The change occurred 3 weeks before her death. Why then? We were updating paperwork, estate planning. At whose initiative, mine, I was being responsible. Or opportunistic, Mrs. Morrison had assets totaling approximately $270,000. You had debts exceeding $120,000. Correct, Morrison objected. Judge Stone overruled. Derek's jaw tightened. My finances aren't relevant to custody. Reed's voice stayed level. They're relevant to motive. Your Honor, we believe Sarah Morrison's death wasn't accidental. We believe Mr. Carver sabotaged her vehicle for financial gain. The courtroom erupted. Morrison shouted objections. Judge Stone's gavel cracked like gunfire. Order, Mr. Reed. Those are serious allegations. Do you have evidence? We do, Your Honor. We request permission to present it. Morrison's face went red. Your Honor, this is outrageous. My client isn't on trial for murder. This is a custody hearing. A custody hearing where character and fitness matter. I'll allow limited testimony. Mr. Reed, make it count. Reed called Chief Nakamura. The Old Navy mechanic walked to the stand with the bearing of someone who'd fixed engines in combat zones and wouldn't be rattled by lawyers. He identified himself, established his credentials, then produced photos of Sarah Morrison's brake line. His voice carried the weight of 40 years turning wrenches. This line was scored. Someone used a blade to cut halfway through, then weaken the rest. Under normal driving, it would hold. Under heavy braking, going downhill, emergency stop, it would fail. That's what happened. This wasn't corrosion. This was sabotage. Morrison cross-examined aggressively, questioning Chief's expertise, his access to evidence, the chain of custody. Chief didn't budge. He'd seen the line. He knew the difference between mechanical failure and criminal intent. Reed called Mrs. Chen next, the elderly neighbor who'd lived next door to Sarah and Derek in Astoria. She testified via video link, her voice accented but clear. She remembered the fights, Derek's gambling, Sarah's threat to leave. Most damning, she remembered hearing Derek working on Sarah's car at 11 p.m. the night before the accident, cursing and banging metal. She remembered him watching from the window the next morning as Sarah drove away smiling. Morrison tried to discredit her elderly, possibly confused hearing problems. Mrs. Chen stared into the camera with the dignity of someone who'd survived worse than lawyers. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. That man killed his wife. Judge Stone called recess. 20 minutes that felt like hours. Hank stood in the hallway leaning against the wall because standing straight required energy he didn't have. The morphine wasn't holding. Pain radiated from his gut through his spine. His hands shook and the yellow tint to his skin had deepened to the color of old parchment. Doc approached, voice low. You need to sit down. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're jaundiced. Pain's breaking through. You should be in a hospital. After the hearing. Hank, after. Eli stood nearby watching adults negotiate his future while counting floor tiles. 37 across 42. Deep 1,554 total. The numbers kept chaos manageable, kept terror from becoming visible. Court resumed. Judge Stone's expression had shifted into something harder. I've reviewed the testimony. While concerning, it's not conclusive for custody purposes. However, I'm ordering the district attorney to review the evidence regarding Sarah Morrison's death. In the interim, I need to hear from Eli himself. The courtroom went silent. Morrison objected, 8 years old, traumatized, coached. Judge Stone overruled. This boy has Asperger's syndrome and an IQ of 145. I believe he's competent to testify about his own preferences. Eli walked to the witness stand. He didn't sit standing at attention, instead shoulders back, hands at his sides. His eyes fixed on the wall behind the judge, not making contact but present in a way that commanded attention. Judge Stone's voice softened. Eli, you can sit if you'd like. Prefer to stand, ma'am, reporting as ordered. Scattered laughter, the judge almost smiled. Very well. Eli, do you understand why we're here? Yes, ma'am, you're determining optimal placement for my continued care and development. Who would you prefer to live with? Eli's gaze didn't waver from the wall. Hank Callahan. Why, the kid's voice stayed clinical, stripping emotion from words that carried freighty trains of feeling. Mr. Callahan found me when I was abandoned. He provided immediate assistance without requiring bureaucratic processing. He listened to my analysis regarding my mother's death when others dismissed it as trauma response. He taught me practical skills. He established clear expectations and consistent routine. He treats my neurodevelopmental differences as variations rather than deficits. Statistical analysis of my psychological state shows 14% improvement in anxiety markers and 23% improvement in social engagement metrics since placement with Mr. Callahan versus previous placement with Mr. Carver. Judge Stone leaned forward. You're saying you're happier with Mr. Callahan. Happiness is subjective. I'm saying I'm demonstrably more functional. And Mr. Carver, how was living with him? Eli's hands clenched briefly, the only sign of emotion. Mr. Carver provided adequate housing and nutrition. He did not provide safety. He killed my mother. I have documented evidence supporting this conclusion with 97.3% confidence interval. Morrison stood, Your Honor. Sit down. Eli, that's a serious accusation. Can you explain your evidence? For the next 10 minutes, Eli walked the court through his analysis. Break line probability calculations. financial motive documentation, timeline correlation between Derek's debt crisis and insurance beneficiary changes, Mrs. Chen's testimony corroborating his reconstruction, the stolen valor evidence establishing pattern of deception. He delivered it without notes, without emotion, with the precision of someone presenting a doctoral thesis. The courtroom sat transfixed, lawyers, bailiffs, court reporter, all watching an 8-year-old dismantle a man's life with mathematics and logic. When he finished, silence held for 15 seconds. Judge Stone removed her glasses. That's remarkable analysis. Thank you, ma'am. My mother taught me intelligence gathering and pattern recognition. She said the truth is just data organized correctly. She was right. Mr. Carver, do you wish to respond? Derek stood, face flushed. Your Honor, this is absurd. I loved Sarah. I would never, that kid's autistic. He doesn't understand. Eli's voice cut through. I have autism spectrum disorder. That affects my social communication, not my analytical capacity. My IQ places me in the 99th percentile. I understand probability, evidence, and causation better than most adults. I understand that you killed my mother for money. I understand that you're attempting to regain custody to prevent my testimony from reaching criminal investigation. I understand that if you succeed, you'll either institutionalize me to silence me or harm me to eliminate the witness. These aren't misunderstandings. These are threat assessments based on your demonstrated behavioral patterns. The courtroom erupted. Morrison shouted about coaching and manipulation. Pastor Reed argued for the accuracy of Eli's analysis. Judge Stone's gavel hammered until order returned. Her voice carried finality. Enough, I've heard sufficient testimony. Here's my ruling: temporary custody remains with Mr. Callahan for 90 days, pending thorough investigation by the district attorney into Sarah Morrison's death. Mr. Carver, you're prohibited from contact with the Eli during this period. If the investigation clears you, we'll revisit custody. If it doesn't, your parental rights will be permanently terminated. Court adjourned. Derek exploded. This is bullshit. That kid's retarded. He doesn't know. Hank stood closing the distance before anyone could stop him. Say it again. Derek's eyes showed fear. What are you? Call him that again. Please. Wade moved between them. Hank, don't. Derek recovered his bravado. You think you won, old man? You'll be dead in 3 months. Where's the kid go then? Back to me. This just delays the inevitable. Hank's voice dropped to something cold. Maybe I die, but I'll die knowing I kept you away from him. That's enough. They left the courthouse, Hank's hands shaking so badly Doc had to drive. Eli sat in the back, staring out the window at Portland traffic, processing victory that felt temporary. His voice came from the back seat. He's right, you'll die and I'll have nowhere to go. Hank twisted in his seat, pain shooting through his spine. We got 90 days. That's enough time to prove he killed your mom, and enough time to find you a real home. What if there isn't a real home? Then we make one. That night, Derek Carver made his final mistake. Surveillance footage from a gas station in Coos Bay showed him meeting with 2 men whose criminal records included assault and extortion. Audio captured from Joker's equipment recorded Derek offering $5,000 to scare the old man into backing off. Wade arrested him Wednesday morning on conspiracy to commit assault. Search of Derek's apartment revealed documents showing he'd increased Jennifer Park's life insurance 3 weeks earlier, forged her signature on beneficiary changes, and researched brake line sabotage techniques on his computer. The murder charge followed Thursday. District Attorney reviewed the evidence: Chief's brake line analysis, Mrs. Chen's testimony, financial motive, the pattern with Jennifer Park, Derek's own recorded statements about eliminating obstacles. They filed second-degree murder charges, bail denied. Derek screamed about frame jobs and conspiracy as they led him away. His lawyer abandoned him when evidence proved overwhelming. Jennifer Park gave testimony about Derek's manipulation, how he'd isolated her from friends, controlled her finances, started working on her car despite her protests. Friday afternoon, Wade called Hank. It's over. Derek's going away for life. Kid's testimony was the key. Without him documenting everything, we never would have looked close enough. Hank sat on his porch phone pressed to his ear, feeling something like relief. So Eli's safe. From Derek, yeah, but Hank, you got to think about next steps. Custody hearings in 87 days. You need a plan. I'm working on it. Except he wasn't, because working required energy, and energy required a body that wasn't eating itself. The cancer had accelerated. Doc's latest blood work showed liver function deteriorating, tumor markers climbing, PSA through the roof. Weight down to 163. Pain constant despite morphine every 3 hours. The yellow tint had spread from eyes to skin, making him look jaundiced and dying, because that's what he was. Doc cornered him Saturday. "You need to start treatment. Now." "What's it buy me?" 3 months, maybe 4. With quality of life. "What quality?" "Vomiting, weakness, losing my hair." "Better than dying in 6 weeks." Hank stared at his hands, watching them shake. "I got Eli settled. Derek's in jail. Kid's safe. That's what I set out to do. Maybe it's enough. And what happens to him when you die?" "You take him. We talked about this." Doc's voice cracked. "Hank, I'm 70 years old. I got diabetes, heart problems. I can't raise a kid." "Then who?" Silence answered. The truth, neither wanted to say. There was no good option. Foster care remained the default, the system Hank had fought to avoid. Eli appeared in the doorway. "I heard you." Both men turned. The kid stood, holding his notebook, face blank, but knuckles white, gripping the cover. His voice came out clinical. "You're discussing my placement post-mortem. Probability you'll die within 90 days has increased to 78% based on observed symptom progression. Probability suitable placement exists 12%. Probability I return to foster care system 88%. Hank's chest constricted. "Kid, don't lie to me. Mom lied about being fine until she died. Derek lied about everything. You promised honesty, so be honest. You're dying faster than expected, and there's no plan for after." The words hung like indictment. Hank had no counter, because everything Eli said was accurate. He was dying. There was no plan. The kid would end up exactly where Hank had fought to prevent. Doc spoke carefully. "Eli, we're going to find you." "No, you won't. You just said you can't take me. Sheriff Cooper's wife has dementia. Pastor Reed's family doesn't fit my needs. Mrs. Chen's too old. There's no solution that satisfies requirements. I'm going back to the system, and we all know it." Hank stood, every movement costing something. "Then I don't die." Both of them stared. Hank walked to Doc. "You said treatment buys time. How much?" 3 to 4 months if it works. Maybe a year if you respond well. And if I do treatment, I can still function. Take care of him. First few months, yeah, you'll be sick, but functional. After that depends on response. Then I do it. Start treatment Monday." Doc's expression shifted to something like hope, trying not to show itself. "Hank, chemo's brutal. You said." "I said I wouldn't do it for myself, but I'll do it for him. If it buys me time to find him a real home, it's worth it." Eli's voice came out small. "You'd do treatment, even though you said you wouldn't." "Yeah, kid, I would." "Why?" Hank knelt, pain screaming through his joints. "Because promises matter. I promised to keep you safe until I knew you had somewhere to go. Haven't done that yet, so I keep fighting." Tears tracked down Eli's face, the first Hank had seen. "But you'll suffer. Treatment makes people sick." "Been sick before, I'll manage." "I don't want you to hurt because of me." "Kid, I hurt anyway. Might as well hurt for a reason." The first chemo session happened Tuesday. Hank sat in the VA hospital infusion center, poison dripping into his veins, surrounded by other veterans fighting their own wars against bodies that had turned traitor. Doc sat with him, monitoring vitals, adjusting dosages, providing the kind of care that came from 40 years of keeping people alive who'd rather die. The nausea started within hours. Hank vomited until his stomach emptied, then dry heaved until his ribs ached. The metallic taste coated his mouth. Food turned to ash. Water came back up minutes after drinking it. Eli sat beside his bed that night, holding a bucket, wiping Hank's face with a cool cloth roll, reversed into caretaker for the man who'd saved him. His voice came out steady. "Mom went through this. Different cancer, same treatment. She said the second week is worse than the first." Hank's voice rattled. "Something to look forward to." "She also said it's survivable. You just have to want to survive." "I want to." "Why, you were ready to die a month ago." Hank managed to focus on the kid's face. "Month ago, I didn't have a reason to live. Now I do. You're the reason." The treatment bought time but extracted cost. Week 2 brought worse nausea, crushing fatigue, hair loss that left Hank's head spotted with patches of stubble. Week 3 added neuropathy, hands and feet going numb, making woodworking impossible. Week 4 brought the moment Doc had warned about, blood work showing tumor markers dropping. Not much, not remission, but dropping instead of climbing. Evidence the poison was working. Doc showed him the results. PSA down from 47 to 39. Liver enzymes improving. Tumor shrinkage on imaging. Hank, you're responding. What's that mean? Means you might have 6 months instead of 3. Maybe more if this continues. Might. Cancer's unpredictable, but right now you're fighting it. Your body's fighting it. Keep this up. You could have a year. A year. 365 days. Time to finish raising Eli. Time to find him a real home. Time to witness legacy instead of just creating it. The custody hearing reconvened in December. Judge Stone reviewed updated reports, Hank's medical status, Eli's continued progress, Derek's guilty plea to second-degree murder and insurance fraud. 30 years to life, eligible for parole in 25. She addressed the courtroom. Given the circumstances, I'm prepared to grant extended custody pending adoption proceedings. Mr. Callahan, do you wish to adopt Eli Morrison? Hank stood stronger than he'd been in weeks. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Morrison, do you consent to adoption by Hank Callahan? Eli stood at attention. Affirmative, ma'am. Then I'm granting preliminary approval. Final hearing in 90 days to complete the process. In the interim, Mr. Callahan maintains full custody. Court adjourned. The VFW threw a party that night. Post-1847, filled with veterans and their families bringing food and stories, and the kind of celebration that happened when someone won against impossible odds. Gunny presented Eli with a plaque, honorary member VFW post-1847 for service to a fallen veteran. The kid held it like it was made of gold. I didn't serve. Gunny's voice carried the weight of 60 years. Your mother served. You honored her memory. That's service. Welcome to the family. January brought the second mission. Sheriff Wade arrived at Hank's house with a boy in tow, 9 years old, thin, scared, holding a backpack like it contained everything he owned. Wade's expression said this wasn't a social call. His voice carried apology. Hank, I got a situation. This is Marcus Chen. Found him at the Portland Greyhound station. Uncle dropped him off, disappeared. Kid won't talk to anyone except to say his mom died and he doesn't have anywhere to go. Hank looked at the boy. Asian features, dark hair, eyes that tracked everything. Lips moving in silent counting. The resemblance to Eli's first day was unmistakable. He kept his voice gentle. What are you counting, son? Marcus's eyes flicked up. Bus schedules. If I memorize them, maybe Uncle will find me. Your uncle's not coming back. How do you know? Because men who abandon kids don't come back. They just leave. Marcus's counting stopped. Then what happens to me? Eli appeared in the doorway. You stay here, that's what happens. We have extra room now. Hank looked at Doc, who'd followed Wade. The old Navy medic smiled. You thinking what I think you're thinking. Can't let the kid go to foster care. You already got one kid in cancer. Cancer's responding. I got time. And Eli needs someone who understands what he went through. Hank, he's staying. We'll do the paperwork. Make it legal. Marcus's voice came out small. You'd let me stay. Even though you don't know me, Eli answered before Hank could. He let me stay when no one else would. That's what he does. That's the mission. The final adoption hearing happened in March. Spring breaking through Oregon, winter daffodils pushing up through mud, the world remembering how to be alive. Judge Stone presided over a courtroom packed with veterans and their families. Doc Hill and Wade Cooper and the VFW brothers, Mrs. Chen, who'd flown in from Astoria, even Cassie Newman, wearing an expression that suggested she'd learned something about the gap between policy and wisdom. Hank stood with Eli on one side, Marcus on the other. 7 months since the bus station. 7 months of chemo that had bought him time. 7 months of building something that looked like family. Judge Stone's voice carried warmth. Hank Callahan, do you promise to raise Eli Morrison and Marcus Chen as your sons to protect, guide, and love them? I do, with everything I got left. Eli Morrison, Marcus Chen, do you accept Hank Callahan as your father? Both boys spoke together, affirmative. Then by the authority vested in me, I declare you father and sons. Eli Callahan, Marcus Callahan, may you have many happy years together. The VFW erupted. Gunny fired rifle salute outside 21 guns for a new family built from broken pieces. Inside, Hank knelt awkwardly, pulling both kids close, feeling weight lift and settle simultaneously. The cancer remained. The clock still ticked. But for now, this moment, he had time. He had sons. He had purpose. Eli's voice came out muffled against his shoulder. You kept your promise. Yeah, kid, I did. Are you going to die soon? Eventually, but not today. Today we celebrate. Marcus looked up. What if the cancer comes back? Then we fight it again. That's what we do. We keep fighting. 2 years later, Hank sat on his porch watching sunset paint Oregon sky in colors Barbara would have loved. The cancer remained in remission, not gone, never gone, but quiet, controlled. The kind of medical miracle that doctors couldn't quite explain, but veterans understood. Purpose extended life. Love pushed back death. Simple as that. Eli worked in the shop teaching Marcus how to read wood grain and calculate measurements. The kid had grown 3 inches, filled out, gained confidence that came from knowing someone would catch you if you fell. His maps covered the workshop walls, now intricate drawings of highways and probabilities and patterns that showed the world as mathematics made visible. Marcus followed him everywhere, absorbing knowledge like he'd been starved for it. Autism too, high-functioning, brilliant in his own way. Together, they created symphony from what most people saw as deficit. Doc's truck pulled into the driveway. The old Navy medic climbed out carrying results from Hank's latest scan. His expression gave nothing away until he reached the porch. You're not going to believe this. Bad news. Opposite, tumors shrunk another 40%. Liver function normal. PSA down to 18. Hank, you're in remission. Real remission. Hank processed this. How long ain't we? Could be permanent, could relapse tomorrow. But right now, your cancer's so controlled it's barely measurable. I've never seen anything like it. The treatment helped, but treatment alone doesn't do this. You did this. Fighting for those kids, building this family, having a reason to wake up every morning that did this. Hank looked at the workshop where his sons argued good-naturedly about optimal angles for table joints. Looked at the house he'd built in 1975 that had survived Barbara's death and Danny's suicide and his own cancer. Looked at sky that promised tomorrow. His voice came out rough. How much time I got. With these numbers, years, actual years. Years to watch them grow up. Yeah, years to be their father. Something in Hank's chest cracked open. Not pain this time, but relief so profound, it felt like grief's opposite. He'd prepared to die. Built peace with ending. And now the universe was giving him something he hadn't dared hope for: time. Real time. Enough to see Eli graduate high school. Enough to teach Marcus everything he knew. Enough to witness legacy instead of just leaving it behind. That night after dinner, after the boys finished homework, after the house settled into evening quiet, Hank gathered them in the living room. The photo wall now included new pictures, Adoption Day, Christmas, with the VFW, the three of them building furniture together, Marcus's first completed project. His voice carried weight earned through 7 months of chemo and 2 years of choosing life over death. Got something to tell you. The cancer's in remission. Eli's head snapped up. Define remission. Means it's controlled. Might not kill me anytime soon. Probability of survival, past 5 years. Doc says maybe 70% if I stay in treatment. Marcus's voice came out small. So you're not dying. Everybody dies eventually, but I'm not dying today, or tomorrow, or next week. I got time now, real time. Eli's clinical mask cracked. How much time? Enough to see you both grow up, enough to teach you everything I know, enough to be your father for real, not just temporary. Marcus launched himself at Hank, wrapping arms around a waist that was still too thin, but stronger than it had been. Eli followed, more carefully precise, even in affection, but genuine in a way he hadn't been capable of 2 years ago. They sat like that, three people built into family through trauma and choice, while Oregon night deepened. Outside and inside warmth pushed back the cold that had almost won. Hank's voice came out quiet. Your mom would be proud of you, Eli. What you did, documenting everything, fighting for justice, that took courage, most adults don't have. She taught me well. She did. And Marcus, wherever your mom is, she's proud too. You survived. That's not nothing. Marcus didn't answer, just held tighter. Later, after the boys went to bed, Hank stood in the workshop running his hand over tools that would outlive him, but not by much anymore. Not if the remission held. Not if he got lucky. Not if purpose continued to do what medicine couldn't quite explain. The shop smelled like sawdust in promise. On the workbench sat the half-finished cradle, this one for Gunny's great-great-granddaughter due in May. Hank picked up his plane, adjusted the blade, started working grain that showed patterns Eli had taught him to see. Each stroke steady, each measurement precise, building something that would last because that's what men did when they had time. They built, they taught, they left behind more than they took. Outside, stars emerged over timber that had stood 100 years and would stand 100 more. Inside, an old man who'd been ready to die discovered the strange grace of living. Not just surviving, living. The mission continued, would continue. Because Marines don't quit on wounded, and there would always be wounded who needed someone stubborn enough to fight for them. Hank Callahan was stubborn enough. He'd proved that, and he had time now to prove it again. Time enough to matter. That's all any man needed. Time enough to matter. He smiled, sat down, the plane walked back to the house where his son slept safe, and made plans for tomorrow. Because tomorrow kept coming, and he'd be there to meet it. The last good man still standing, still fighting, still finishing the mission, one day at a time, one promise kept, one life saved. That was legacy. That was victory. That was enough.